What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. So if you guys been following along the channel, you guys know we have a 387 stroker motor that we've been building on the channel. You can see the parts all behind me lined up on the bench. So if you're new to the channel, this is probably the most budget Ford stroker that you could possibly build, but it did have a little bit of issues on the way, but that's what we're here today on the channel to do, is to learn how to put this engine together. If you're curious to find out what the rotating assembly looks like and see if the camshaft clears our stock Fox pistons and our stock Windsor rods, then stick around, hit that like and subscribe, and let's get busy here. All right, so real quick, if you are new to the channel, this is a production junkyard block. This has been decked. We actually just honed it here in the shop with the cylinders because the standard bore looked really good, which pretty much is the staple for us building this 387. You got to have a pretty good standard bore to be able to even attempt that. What we actually did was we took a Fox body piston. If these look familiar, you can see inside that they are the TRW E7ZE pistons that we pulled out of a 302 Fox body engine. And what we ended up doing is mating them to the factory Windsor rods that came out of our 351 Windsor here. So this build consists of production pistons, production rods, production block, which you can get at the junkyard, but we did have to use an aftermarket crank. This is just a cheap $300 cast steel crank. You can see we did a little bit of balancing on it, and we used the balancer in the other video if you guys have been following the channel. So just to catch you guys up to speed, what we'll be doing today is we'll be actually installing the crankshaft. We'll be setting the pistons in, as we've already got some of the rings set up. We'll be putting the camshaft in because one of the things that we're very curious about is we had some clearancing issues on the block that we recently took care of along with the pistons, but we want to make sure that the camshaft clears all the skirts of the 302 piston. This isn't much different than what you would do with like a 393 build. You could do a budget 393 build if you had a set of forged 30 over pistons out of your 302 that we're still in good order. You know, we had a good standard bore, and that was kind of the staple. We were able to save money on not having to have it bored and not having to buy pistons. So those are pretty good pistons to begin with. These are factory forged pistons from the factory. We're gonna give them a shot, and we're gonna beat the hell out of them. Let's get to work. The first thing we're actually going to do is we're going to stick the main bearings in. We ended up going with a +1 or a 1 under bearing because we did measure the bearing clearance already, and it ended up being like 1.5 thou. So we wanted to make it a little bit of a looser motor. So we went to a 2.5 thou, and we figured it would be just fine. You know, every motor's a little bit different, so that's what we're going to go with this one. And it's just the part number. It's cheap. No big deal. So you're going to see us put these in. I'm going to wipe the crankshaft down, and then we'll get it installed. We'll get them torqued down, and then I'm going to start on the pistons. We'll talk about them next. So remember, when you're installing your main bearings, that the little slot goes up because that's where the oil comes in. We're going to use some engine assembly lube. We're also going to lubricate the cylinders with just, you know, a generic, you know, motor oil, just a little bit. We're not going to get crazy with the lubrication with the it just helps for the piston rings kind of to go in with our little tool that we'll get into. So. All right, so we got our assembly lube started on our lower bearings or upper, however you want to call it. We're going to go ahead and wipe our main caps down and get the bearings installed here on the main caps. Now remember, these main caps are numbered. As you can see, there's a number 1, and there's an arrow pointing towards the front of the block. Number 2, number 3, number 4. Obviously, you can't get 4 wrong or 5 wrong because that's the rear main cap for sure. So, and your number 3 with the thrust bearing always gets the oil pump pickup tube, stud, whatever you want to call it. All right, so it's now time to put our crankshaft in. We got it wiped down pretty good. We're ready to go. This thing is heavy, bro. It should be going nice and easy. I say easy as I slam it in there. Looks good. Feels good. A little fill bound up. We're going to stick our main caps in and at least just get them started. It's very important not to force it. We're gonna get some assembly lube on these main caps. and get them in the block. Here we go. All right, we got the crankshaft in here. It's nice and tight. So we're at the point now to where we're going to torque them down. So we're gonna go in 3 steps. We're gonna go 30, 60, 90, and then a final torque would be 100. I think that's where we're gonna go with the 351, because I think standard 351 torque specs are like 95 to 105, and I'm pretty sure that the rod bolts are going to be like 40 to 45. So we're gonna wipe the crank down one more time, because the next thing we're gonna be installing are the Fox body pistons in the original rods, which I know everyone's been curious to see. So stick around. Let's get. Sorry about the time lapses, but that's just engine building. We're doing the rotating assembly, like I said, with the timing chain cover and the camshaft, so we can go back over to the other shop. So figured I'd do a video, and we'll have another video of us finishing it. All right, so the crankshaft's all torqued in at 100 foot-pounds. Everything looks good. So we're on to the second iteration here, which is the Fox body pistons and the Windsor rods. So we'll go ahead and dismantle all these caps. All these caps are numbered, of course. You can see the Hastings rings we just used, and they had the dots. We had already installed the second rail, which had a top dot already on it. Now the top rail is gonna have a bevel inside. I already know what it looks like. So we gotta actually stick the top rail ring back in, and we're gonna stick some rubber, protective things over these rod bolts, so the rod bolts don't go into the crankshaft and score the crankshaft. So pretty cool to see Fox body pistons go into a 351, but like I said, we'll put some rubber over this and put it down in the cylinder, and last thing we'll do is the camshaft and the timing chain. So let me get these rings on, put you on another time lapse, and we'll get rolling. The bevel has to be up on these piston rings, and you probably can't see it here on the channel here, but there's a bevel just inside, and then it has to be up on the Hastings rings. We'll get all these piston rings installed on these pistons, and we'll move over to getting the block and getting these installed. And also, these piston rings all have to be clocked, including the rails, in a specific location, so they don't they can never be lined up. So they got to be clocked in different locations. So okay, so we got the piston rings pretty much clocked in the right location. Guys, this isn't a super expensive build. This is supposed to be a cheap budget build. So a lot of the parts that we're using are secondhand, are just replacements, production, king bearings, just cheap stuff that you can get at the parts store for the most part. But this block's gonna definitely act, similar to what a 408 or a 393 would. It's just gonna have factory pistons in it. And we all know factory pistons don't, they don't give up very easily to begin with. So it'd be super interesting to see how well these Windsor and these piston rings and these pistons fit in this block, especially when we put the camshaft and lifters in. That's our next move. I'm gonna show you the install on one of the pistons, and then we're gonna time lapse the rest of the 8, because it's the same thing pretty much for, each piston. So in this specific application though, number 1 in the dot's gonna go forward. Now, I like to flip my pistons on my 302s. We're gonna end up putting it in dot first towards the front of the block. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So like I said, we're gonna get some rubber protectors on here that we have over here that we've saved over the years. We're gonna lubricate these cylinders, and I'm gonna clock these piston rings one more time, and then we're gonna go ahead and tap this piston right into place. So we're gonna stick our little rubber protectors on here. These are actually fit for 302s, but now we're on to our rod bearings. Rod bearings have do not have a top and a bottom, it doesn't matter. And these are just your standard ones. Just a set of cheapies, no big deal. So we're gonna set these in here, put a little assembly lube on them, and start tapping them into the cylinders. Checking my oil rail. I got one here, I got one here, which is good. And then pretty much stagger. Had to move the rings around. That's the way you want to do it. So I got this nifty little tool that I got from Summit Racing. It's a little 4-inch little sleeve thing. This thing saves a ton of headaches. So go ahead and set the piston in the sleeve here. Make sure the crankshaft is all the way to the bottom here so it can accept the rod. And we're about to stick a Fox body piston in a 351. So Look at that. It's coming down. Can't be nice about it. Fox body piston in a 351. Like I said, I'm only going to show you this once. Since we already have the rod bolt in place, or the rod bearing in place, we're going to go ahead and tap this piston all the way down. Just like that. See that? These rubber things keep it from scoring the crankshaft. Yeah, we can go ahead and pull this, turn this motor over and put the cap on. Torque it to 45. I'm going to put the cheapy little bearing or whatever in here, put a little assembly lube on it so it's lubricated when it starts. You want to make sure that you follow the number on numbers for the champers. So these are, it just happen to be marked 1 and 1. You can't really get that wrong anyways, it's only going to go on one way really. So we're going to torque these to 45. And we're going to leave them. These are football rods, so I'm pretty happy with these rods. I've used these before. So we're going to torque these to 45, and I'm going to put you on a time lapse. We're going to finish all 8 of them, and then that part will be done. All right, so we're going to set these to 45, which we've already kind of preset them. Cousin Paul's going to spin it around, nice and easy. All right, let's check the top. The motion of the first one. Check that out. Look how big that stroke is in that bore. It's awesome. Check it out. 302 piston and a 351. It looks like it's pretty much right at 0 deck. All right, guys, so we got the first piston in. We got it nice and locked down. We're gonna go ahead and do the opposite piston, or that's the same one that's on the next on the journal. We're gonna kind of put you on a time lapse. You know, one piston after the other. I'm not really, if there's something that catches my eye that I think you should see, well then, yeah, we'll stop the video, but we'll get all the pistons in the block, then we'll put the camshaft and timing chain on, and we'll see if the pistons clear. Some of the stuff that you read on the internet about the 387 strokers is that the skirts are too long. We did have a little bit of clearancing issue that you guys already know about on the side skirts. So we'll see if the actual Anderson B31 camshaft that we're installing in the motor is gonna hit as well. So if that's clears, then guys, this is a cheap budget build that I'm super happy that we were part of. So stick around, let's go into the time lapse. Like I said, I'll stop in the middle if I see anything of significance. All right, so we got piston number 1 and number 5, which is on the same rod bearing journal, on the same crankshaft journal here. So we're gonna go ahead and bring it around and make sure nothing's binding up. Looks good, nothing's catching. You can see how close that rod bolt gets right there. See that? That's crazy. All right, let's flip it over and see. All right, look at that. Well, that's 0 for sure. Yeah, that might even be sticking out a little bit. That's got a pretty big stroke for a motor. So once again, we're just gonna, I just wanted to show you that you should do the pistons on the same journal. It's kind of easier. You just go from 1 to 5, 2 to 6, 3 to 7, 4 to 8. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So just like a 302. So again, we're gonna throw it back on the time lapse and just keep right on moving. We'll get these pistons in, check all the torques, and then we're gonna put the camshaft and timing chain in, and that's pretty much all we're gonna do for this video. Pretty much the rotating assembly. So. All right, so we got the whole rotating assembly in. Everything's torqued down to 45 on the rod bolts, and all the main caps are 100. And it definitely is pretty tight. how tight the pistons are in there. Look at that. Very nice little build. So from here, we're going to go ahead and get the camshaft lubricated for the engine assembly lube, and we're going to get this little rod installed in the end, and I'm going to go ahead and put the cam in with the timing chain. You know, we're going to go dot to dot, traditional setup. You know, we're not going to advance it or retard the timing gears. So yeah, we really want to see if this cam is going to clear. So the moment you guys all been waiting for. So this little tool is kind of neat. It kind of helps you actually get the camshaft in, lube up all the journals to give it some pre-assembly lube. We're going to prime the engine anyways. Also brings the new oil up to these journals, but you know, it is what it is. So I want to give a big shout out to Trick Flow Specialties, donating the Trick Flow double roller true timing chain to the build here. So big shout out to Trick Flow. We're going to go ahead and get this thing. Like I said, we're just going to go traditional dot to dot. I know we got to get the harmonic balancer bolt off, but won't be that big of a deal. So we got the Trick Flow timing chain set on here. Now I'm just setting the bolt. You can see how tight the chain is, and then it's not really, you know, it's not fully seated just yet. But you got to have, don't forget, you have to have a retainer, cam retainer thing that a lot of people, shit, I forgot it once a couple times myself. Easy to forget. But all right, guys. So here's the moment of truth. The camshaft clearing the 302 factory stock skirt. We've already got the timing chain set, and we are going to get in here to see if any of the skirts touch. All right, 387. Checking to see if the camshaft. See how far off? Stop. Come back. See how far off that skirt is to that camshaft? Depending on what sort of camshaft you actually go with, will depend on, you know, obviously this is a 550 lift cam, so you can see right there, those lobes aren't even really close at all. Not really an issue. The only real clearancing issues that we had was right here. Bring that rod bolt up. Was right there at that block, that if you're using factory rod bolts. And of course, you can see right here on this skirt how close it was to the counterbalance. All right, guys, that's pretty much all I got for you for this video. Me and Cousin Paul have assembled a 387 stroker junkyard budget block that we've been talking about doing for quite a few years now. Windsor rods, box body pistons, a good standard bore roller, 351 roller block we just honed out, and a cheap little $300 cast crank. Some of you guys might say, well, why you run with a cast cheap crank? Why would you do that? Well, that's probably rated at about the same rating that the rods or the pistons would give up anyway. So why spend more money? It's still got junkyard parts in it, right? So we still got a lot of work to do to the engine, but a lot of the grunt work is done here on the rotating assembly. Everything else is kind of just checking. You know, we're gonna check piston and valve one more time on some of the cylinder heads that we have, and legitimately, you know, get it put back together and get it ready to fire. So 387 stroker, probably the most budget junkyard Ford stroker you can build. You guys have heard about it. You guys have read about it on the forums all for years. Right there it is. All right, guys, that's pretty much all I got for you for this video. If you guys enjoy this sort of content, leave me a comment below. Let me know what you guys think. Give me a thumbs up if you liked the video. Maybe consider joining the channel. If you're new to the channel, check out that join button for channel membership, as a channel membership helps to do things like this on the channel. Outside of that, guys, I just appreciate you watching. Me and Cousin Paul will see you guys in the next video. Thanks.